He thought she was just another pretty face to pass the time with a billionaire who collected women like expensive watches. But when Selena walked into his penthouse that night, she didn't just steal his heart. She exposed the one secret that could destroy his empire forever. Let me tell you about Grayson Blackwell, a name that used to make Wall Street tremble and Manhattan socialites swoon. This man wasn't just rich. He was obscenely wealthy. We're talking $12 billion, with a B. His penthouse overlooked Central Park like he owned the entire city, and honestly, with that kind of money, he practically did. But here's what made Grayson different from other billionaires. While most of them at least pretended to look for love, Grayson had turned dating into an art form, a cold, calculated business strategy. He had rules, and he never broke them. Rule number 1, 3 months maximum. Rule number 2, never get emotionally involved. Rule number 3, always have an exit strategy. I'm not kidding when I say this man had it down to a science. His assistant, Elliot, poor Elliot, actually kept spreadsheets of Grayson's relationships. 3 months on the dot, Elliot would prepare what they called departure packages, $100,000, a nice piece of jewelry, and a polite but firm goodbye. Grayson prided himself on never having a messy breakup, never dealing with tears or drama. Clean, efficient, heartless. You see, Grayson had convinced himself that this system was actually kind. He was upfront about not wanting commitment. He treated these women well while they were together and compensated them generously when it ended. In his twisted mind, he was being honest. But what he was really doing was treating human hearts like rental cars, something temporary to enjoy and then return without a second thought. The women in his life were always the same type: stunning, ambitious, but ultimately replaceable, models, actresses, socialites who were just as interested in his bank account as he was in their beauty. It was transactional, and everyone seemed to understand the game. Grayson had perfected the art of keeping people at arm's length while making them feel special. He was charming, generous, and completely hollow inside. But every player meets their match eventually, and Grayson came in the form of Selena Vaughn. When I first heard about how they met, I knew this story was going to be different. It was at one of those exclusive charity galas where tickets cost more than most people's cars. Grayson was in his element, schmoozing with politicians, making business deals over champagne, being the center of attention. Then he saw her across the room, and something shifted. Selena wasn't trying to catch anyone's attention. She was actually engaged in what looked like a heated debate with some city planners about affordable housing. She was passionate, articulate, and completely unimpressed by the glittering crowd around her. This woman had something Grayson had never encountered before. She had substance. Grayson was used to women melting at the moment he introduced himself. His name alone usually did the trick. But when he approached Selena with his practiced charm, something unprecedented happened. She looked him up and down, listened to his smooth introduction, and said the words that would haunt him. "That's nice. I'm sure you're very important to someone." And then she turned back to her conversation. I wish I could have seen his face in that moment. Here was a man who could buy and sell most people in that room being dismissed like he was just another guy trying to pick up women at a party. For the first time in decades, Grayson Blackwell felt ordinary. And instead of walking away like any sensible person would, instead of moving on to easier prey, he became obsessed. That night marked the beginning of the end for Grayson Blackwell, though he had no idea. He thought he was starting another casual fling. What he was actually doing was setting the stage for the most spectacular downfall I've ever witnessed. Grayson Blackwell was a man who always got what he wanted, but Selena Vaughn was about to teach him that some things can't be bought. After that charity gala, he couldn't get her out of his head. This wasn't just attraction. This was something foreign to him. For the first time in his adult life, Grayson felt challenged. He did what any obsessed billionaire would do. He researched her. Within 48 hours, he knew everything about Selena Vaughn. 28 years old, graduated summa cum laude from Columbia's architecture program. grew up in Detroit with a single mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. This woman had clawed her way to success with nothing but raw talent and determination. She had just moved to New York to work for a small firm specializing in sustainable urban development, making a fraction of what Grayson spent on lunch. But here's what really got to him. In all his research, he couldn't find a single weakness. No gambling debts, no shopping addiction, no desperate need for luxury. Selena Vaughn was genuinely content with her modest life, and that terrified him. How do you manipulate someone who doesn't want anything you have? So he tried a different approach. He started showing up at her favorite coffee shop, the little place near her office where she grabbed her morning latte. "What a coincidence," he'd say with that $1,000,000 smile. Selena would nod politely and leave. He tried the art galleries she frequented, the bookstore where she spent her weekends. Each time she was cordial but completely uninterested. After 3 weeks of failed coincidental meetings, Grayson did something he hadn't done in 20 years. He swallowed his pride. He called Selena directly and asked her to coffee. Not dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant. Not a helicopter ride to the Hamptons. Just coffee. "I don't date men who think money solves everything," she told him flatly. But then, after a pause that felt like an eternity, she added, "But I suppose we could have coffee as friends. Dutch treat. Dutch treat." Grayson Blackwell, who hadn't paid for his own coffee in a decade because someone was always trying to buy his favor, was going Dutch on a $3 latte. That coffee date changed everything. What was supposed to be a quick meeting turned into an 8-hour marathon conversation. They talked about everything. Her childhood dreams of building homes for families who couldn't afford them. His complicated relationship with the fortune he'd inherited and multiplied. For the first time in his life, Grayson found himself actually listening instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. Selena had this way of looking at the world that fascinated him. She saw potential where others saw problems. She talked about transforming abandoned lots into community gardens, about architecture as a tool for social justice. And when she spoke about her work, her eyes lit up in a way that made Grayson realize he'd never been truly passionate about anything in his life. 3 months came and went. Grayson's sacred deadline. Elliot even prepared the usual departure package, $100,000 and a pair of diamond earrings. But Grayson couldn't do it. He couldn't even look at the package without feeling sick to his stomach. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone who knew him. He kept seeing Selena. 6 months passed, then 9. Grayson found himself changing in ways he didn't recognize. He started asking Selena about her projects, even visiting construction sites where she was consulting. He began to understand that there was more to life than accumulating wealth and power. He was becoming human. But the most dangerous change was this. Grayson Blackwell was falling in love. Real love. The kind that makes you vulnerable. That makes you want to be better than you are. And for a man who had built his entire life on emotional detachment, this feeling was both exhilarating and terrifying. He had no idea that this transformation would ultimately destroy him. By the time Grayson had been with Selena for almost a year, he was a completely different man. His friends barely recognized him. Gone were the calculated 3-month relationships, the cold business transactions disguised as romance. This man, who had spent decades building walls around his heart, was finally letting someone in. And it terrified him as much as it thrilled him. Grayson started doing things he'd never done before. He'd cancel important meetings just to spend time with Selena. He listened to her talk about sustainable architecture for hours, genuinely fascinated by her passion. He even started questioning his own business practices, wondering if there was a way to use his wealth for something meaningful instead of just accumulating more power. But here's the thing about people who've lived their entire lives behind emotional barriers. Even when they think they're being completely open, they're still hiding something. And Grayson's something was buried deep in his private study, locked away from the world, and especially from Selena. It was a Tuesday night in November when everything unraveled. Grayson had been called away on an emergency business trip to Singapore. Something about a hostile takeover that needed his immediate attention. Selena was staying at his penthouse, working late on a housing project proposal that had been consuming her thoughts for weeks. She needed to print some documents, and Grayson had told her she could use his home office. It should have been simple: print the papers and go to bed. But when Selena walked into that study, she noticed something she'd never seen before. One of the filing cabinets was slightly open, revealing folders with what looked like women's names on them. Curiosity got the better of her. At first, she thought maybe these were business contacts or employees. But when she opened the first folder, her blood went cold. It was labeled Isabella Rodriguez. Duration: 3 months, 2 weeks. Inside was a detailed dossier that looked like something from a private investigator's office. Photos, background checks, employment history, family information, even surveillance reports documenting Isabella's daily routines, her friends, her financial situation. There were notes in Grayson's handwriting about her weaknesses, her insecurities, what motivated her. It read like a military intelligence file on an enemy target. With trembling hands, Selena opened another folder. Catherine Williams. Duration: 2 months, 3 weeks. The same thorough documentation. Another folder. Sophia Chun. Duration: 3 months exactly. Each folder contained the complete life story of a woman who had trusted Grayson, who had shared intimate moments with him, never knowing they were being studied like lab specimens. But the worst was yet to come. Hidden behind all the other folders was one with her own name. Selena Vaughn. Duration: 11 months, ongoing. Her stomach dropped as she realized the scope of Grayson's investigation into her life. He knew about her mother's medical bills. He knew about her student loans. He knew about the scholarship she'd lost in college and had to work 3 jobs to pay for her education. But it got darker. As Selena dug deeper, she discovered the real purpose behind Grayson's dating patterns. Several of his ex-girlfriends had worked for companies that Grayson later acquired or destroyed through hostile takeovers. The pillow talk, the intimate conversations where these women shared their workplace frustrations or insider information, it had all been carefully documented and used for corporate espionage. Grayson Blackwell hadn't just been collecting hearts, he'd been collecting secrets. His entire romantic life was an elaborate intelligence operation designed to give him business advantages. Every kiss was calculated, every "I love you" was strategic, every moment of intimacy was a transaction. And as Selena sat there in that cold study, surrounded by evidence of Grayson's systematic manipulation of women's hearts, she realized the most painful truth of all. She had no idea which version of their relationship was real. Did he actually love her, or was she just his longest-running con job? The man she thought she knew, the man she'd fallen in love with, didn't exist. He was just another carefully constructed lie. When Grayson returned from Singapore 3 days later, he walked into his penthouse expecting to find Selena asleep in his bed, probably exhausted from working on her housing project. Instead, he found her sitting calmly at his dining table, every single one of his secret files spread out in front of her like evidence at a crime scene. The look on his face when he saw those folders was something I wish I could have captured. Pure terror mixed with the desperate scramble of a man whose carefully constructed world was crumbling in real time. Grayson Blackwell, who had built an empire on deception, was finally facing the truth. "Selena, I can explain," he started, but she held up her hand to stop him. Her voice was steady, controlled, nothing like the emotional breakdown he might have expected. 11 months, she said quietly. "You've been documenting my life for 11 months. My mother's medical history, my college transcripts, my financial struggles, even the conversation I had with my neighbor about my cat." She picked up a photograph from her file, a picture of her leaving her apartment that she never knew was being taken. "Did you ever love me, Grayson, or was I just your most challenging case study?" Grayson tried everything. He begged. He pleaded. He explained that she was different, that she had changed him, that everything he felt for her was real. And maybe some of it was true. But Selena had seen too much evidence of his systematic manipulation to believe anything that came out of his mouth. But here's what Grayson didn't know about Selena Vaughn. She wasn't just brilliant. She was strategic. While he was in Singapore, she hadn't just discovered his secrets. She had documented everything. Every file, every photograph, every piece of evidence of his corporate espionage operation. She had spent 3 days methodically building a case that would make federal prosecutors weep with joy. Sometimes, it takes a broken heart to bring down an entire empire. Selena didn't just walk away. She walked out with the truth. And Grayson? He finally learned the cost of treating love like a transaction. So now I ask you, was it revenge or was it justice? Would you have done what Selena did or walked away in silence? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. And if you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or told you were just another pretty face, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can do is expose the lie they swore she'd never find.